What up, y'all? It's Dom, and today we're talking about the Fuji XS10. After extensive use, do I think it's the best all-around affordable camera on the market today? Let's get into it. Has ever heard the saying, the jack of all trades and the master of none? Well, if you finish that saying, it actually goes, the jack of all trades, the master of none is oftentimes better than the master of one. And that probably identifies with the Fuji XS10 better than anything I've ever heard. This camera comes in at $999 body only. Now this 26.1 megapixel sensor is the exact same sensor that comes out of the Fuji X-T4. My Fuji loyalists out there, or those that have used the XT line, the X-T3, X-T4, you will know and you will see that the reviews on this sensor are superb. Good dynamic range, of course, excellent colors, what they're known for. Good low light performance. For an APS-C crop sensor, I was really blown away by the amount of detail and amount of maneuverability I can do with the shadows in post. It really was just a nice file to work with. Now, I do love a good Fuji file. I've always been kind of a fanboy for the Fuji colors, so I'm a bit subjective there, but I really think even the JPEGs, they look better than almost every other brand on the market today in terms of color and saturation and punchiness. This camera is heavily marketed for its film simulations, these digital filters that are put on top of the JPEG when you're shooting photos to be able to share or use the photos right away. Now, I gotta tell you, to be honest with you, I'm not a JPEG shooter. I never shoot JPEG. I don't even shoot RAW plus JPEG. So really, a big portion of this camera is kind of useless to me. I don't ever use the film simulations. I find them annoying, and actually the first thing I did when I bought this camera was I changed the custom function of the top dial to be able to shut off the film simulation on there, and I changed it to a different setting overall. I was very pleased with the RAW files, and you will not be disappointed even if you're coming off a full frame system. If you're coming from other Fuji bodies, or if you used Fuji bodies in the past like an X-T3, X-T4, X Pro 1, something like that, you will know that Fuji has been really big on analog dials. They always have that old school feel to them with the analog top dials for ISO and aperture and shutter speed, and I've always loved that. It's been really fun to shoot those cameras. This body does not have any of that. It's almost a redesign, kind of a unicorn in the Fuji lineup. It doesn't have those top dials. It has the traditional multi-function dial that you see on like a Sony or Canon DSLR with a program mode, an aperture mode, a shutter speed mode, an automatic mode, multiple custom modes. And I don't have anything wrong with those dials. I'm not opposed to it. It's just something different than what I'm used to seeing on Fuji. I couldn't speak more highly about the functionality and button layout and overall fit and finish of this body. The buttons fit my hands extremely well. I couldn't speak higher about the grip. I think it's one of the best feeling bodies I ever had in my hands in recent years. I just really love the way it feels. The weight, the size, the balance of it with a good prime lens on the front. That being said, it is very subjective what I'm saying here. Your hands may not fit this body like mine do. It just kind of fit me like a glove, but you may find yourself missing those dials or not liking the button layout. Now let's talk about the internals. The processor allows it to shoot 8 frames per second, which is fast enough. It's, again, not groundbreaking, but it's good enough to get the job done. You could up that to 30 frames per second by using an electronic shutter. I wouldn't say it's something that you would choose for sports, but it's definitely not going to hold you back for any type of, fast action type thing. Let's talk about the in-body image stabilization. First of all, that's kind of what intrigued me the most, because you do not see in-body image stabilization with a rated 6 stops of range in the body at this price point, especially on a crop sensor. Now in my testing, it did a good job. I wouldn't say it's great. It's not an expert system by any means. It's not the best system I've ever used, but I have nothing bad to say about it. It got the job done. I definitely noticed a difference, and I got sharp photos at a slower shutter speed. So it did what it said it's going to do. Now, I'll say it's significantly better than the A6600, probably even better than my A7 III, not as good as someone like the Panasonics or Olympics that I've used. So overall, I'm happy to see in-body image stabilization at this price point. Now let's talk about autofocus. Again, something that really intrigued me when I saw that it has real-time continuous eye tracking autofocus. And I will say, highly recommend. Again, did a really fantastic job. I was very impressed. I had low expectations coming in because I hadn't seen other systems aside from Canon and Sony really implement eye tracking very well. I've used some of the older Fujis, and I will say the autofocus is always a little bit behind, a little bit slower, a little bit sluggish, and definitely something that annoyed me coming off a Sony or Canon. But in this X-T30 for photography, I definitely didn't notice that. I found it to be speedy and accurate and not hunting a lot. I saw sharp images throughout, so again, did the job and did the job well. All right, now we can't talk about an all-around camera without talking about video, because so many shooters out there now want the best of both worlds, and this camera is no different. So I'm gonna jump in and actually show you some test footage from my studio shoot. Right now, we are looking at some test footage from the Fuji XS10. This is a locked off shot in studio with obviously my controlled studio lighting. I like looking at footage like this, locked off with controlled studio light, because I think majority of the people that hit me up for this camera are looking at it for YouTube type online creation, exactly like this, talking head type stuff, talking about their business or products that they make, maybe doing reviews or beauty reviews, something like that. And I actually think this camera can do this really well. I am surprised by how much punch this camera packs. It's a discussion of value versus quality, and I think this looks absolutely fantastic. Now, mind you, yes, this camera is a sub 1,000 body on the used market right now, and we are shooting in 4K with real-time eye tracking. I have external mics plugged in, so you are hearing that. And overall, I think it's an incredible little value for the package that you're getting. But mind you, I am shooting on the 35mm f1.4 lens. Now, I love this lens along with other Fuji primes, the wide open f1.4 primes that Fuji offers right now. They're a fantastic line of lenses. I really like them for photography and video work. What do you guys think? Do you think it looks good right now? Because I think it looks phenomenal for what it is. Doesn't do quite as good on the go with stabilized footage and those sort of things. But if you are having it on a gimbal or something like that, it can still get some really cinematics type shots. This is the inaccurate vlogging test for the Fuji XS10. I have it on auto settings right now. And really the problem here is that the 35mm f1.4 lens is the only lens I have currently. So you can see I'm stretched all the way out and it's still not nearly wide enough. I'm just shooting onboard mics right now because I wanted you to hear that. Of course, I could throw external audio on and it would sound good. Hold for plane. But I am pretty impressed by the real-time eye tracking autofocus in 4K. It actually does a really good job and it's staying pretty much locked onto my eye. So I could see this being a decent vlogger if you had a nice wide lens and an external mic. And all you really have to worry about is image stabilization. So I think this is a really good all-around option. What do you guys think? How is the focus looking? How does it sound for inboard mics? What do you guys think of this footage? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think this could be an everyday 4K type of shooter for you? I think for me, it could if I have specific situations like this that are controlled, but let me know your thoughts. I'll talk to you soon. As you can see, a fully capable, very functional 4K studio setup. A fantastic little camera. No overheating. I didn't find any overheating in my tests. It was cut off at 30-minute, the 30-minute record limit. It cut off there before I ever hit any overheating issues. I didn't have much complaints when I was using this camera. It was one of the rare times I used a camera and I had to actively sit there and think, what don't I like? What is bugging me? What can I talk about in a review video? Because I don't like giving a review where everything is positive because it just feels inauthentic to me. But when I was sitting there using this camera, I really had to sit and think what it is I don't like. What can I nitpick at? Because I liked kind of everything. It was a really fantastic camera overall. They removed the dial on the front to change from continuous focus to single point to manual focus. And that kind of bugged me. I was searching for that before. I like having that on body. It just saves time. Battery life was subpar, especially comparing it to like others in its class, the A6400 or the M50 Mark II, or even some of the Nikons. The battery life was worse than those. I felt I had to change this out a lot, and that's probably because it's more feature packed, like in-body image stabilization, that takes battery, 4K 24, comparing it to like the Canon, that takes more battery life. So overall, I wouldn't give up the features for the battery life. You just need to know you're getting to buy a lot of battery. No full frame upgrade. That's interesting because I wrote that down as a con, but actually the more I think about it, the more it's kind of a positive. Fuji doesn't have a full frame option. They do have high-end flagship cameras for APS-C, or you could jump to their medium format. Now, that's always held me back in the past, but actually when I was using this camera and thinking about it, I was thinking I'm gonna recommend this camera. It's spoiler alert, I like the freaking camera. So as I'm recommending it, I've always said, it's good to jump into a system, but know what you're going to want to jump up to. And really that's where not having a full frame plays to the Fuji strengths, because as you get into this camera, you could start buying out your glass. You can get good professional prime glass that's really sharp and really expensive, and then not have to worry about having to sell that all when you want to upgrade to a full frame system. Something that I kind of never thought about. Fuji now has the lineup where I could say you can shoot professional shoots with some of the Fuji flagship bodies. You could shoot it with this body if you have the skills. So I guess it's kind of a con, but also kind of a pro. The only other con I found was the 240 frames per second slow motion in 1080 is complete trash. In fact, I would only use the 1080-60, which I found to be very nice. But if you are a 120-240 shooter, you may be limited there. That may be an issue for you. The only other consideration you should have if you're thinking about buying this camera is you may want to look at the X-T3. It's essentially the same price point as the XS10 right now, especially on the used market. And the X-T3 is a fantastic, more feature-packed camera, especially for photography. So I may want to steer some people in that direction. In concluding, a jack of all trades, a master of none. I'd much rather have this camera than a lot of other freaking cameras that master just one thing on the market. So I think if you are looking into content creation, vlogging, YouTubing, Instagram, you want to get into photography, maybe start shooting some weddings or portraits, this camera can do everything you want. All you need are the skills and the glass to execute. Now that is a big thing. You will need to spend a little bit of money on good Fuji glass, but if you have that and you have the skills, I can't recommend any other camera better than this one, especially at the $1,000 and under price point. It's kind of a no-brainer. If you are looking in that mid to intermediate tier, take a look at the Fuji XS10. I appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit me with a thumbs up and a like for more. Subscribe, and if you want to check this out and more reviews, check out all the links in the description below. I appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.